Hey guys and gals, it's your buddy Drew with Living Histories, Mysteries, and Ferocious Feline Productions. You know, going through and doing some of these stories for you guys. Some of them really uh, get to you. Um, they really get inside you. It's currently like 12 minutes after 3 a.m. I started touching on doing some research yesterday on this subject, and I went to work, and it just the thought of this just ate into me. The wife left for work last night. I came right back in the studio, and I've been in here pretty much ever since. I think I dozed off here in the chair 4 or 5 times and got right back into researching this. Um, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about it. I'm going to let you guys check it out and hear all the information on it. And much like the Bath, Michigan um, school disaster, uh, being who I am, I guess. But like I said, I'm going to let you guys check it out and we'll talk afterwards.
Lakeview Elementary School was a small school near the shore of Lake Erie in a small town known as Collinwood, Ohio. Collingwood was a small town home to about 8,000 people. It was a place where everyone knew everyone and the neighbors looked out for each other. Though small, the town was a diverse collection of people from many backgrounds, mainly due to the railroad industry that was prominent in the area. According to one of my sources, by 1899, Collingwood had its own school system, a newspaper, 6 churches, plentiful businesses, and even an amusement park. Over 300 children attended Lakeview Elementary School, which stood 4 stories tall and housed 9 classrooms. The school day began every day at 8:45 a.m. March 4th, 1908 started off as any other day for the students. Parents would get them up and ready for school. Some were more ready for the school day than others. Mothers and fathers would watch their kids head out for a day of learning, not knowing that this day would soon become a nightmare. The children arrived at school, filling the classrooms to start the day. At around 9:30 a.m., about 45 minutes after classes began, a 5th grade student named Emma Niebert noticed smoke rising from a storage closet in the basement. She would inform the janitor, Mr. Fritz Herder, and he would rush to sound the fire alarm. Sitting in their classrooms, many of the students were no doubt focusing on what they were being taught, or maybe thinking about what they would do once the school day was over. When the fire alarm rang, many assumed it was another drill and began moving towards the classroom doors to exit the building, as they had trained to do many times before. As they entered the hallways, though, it became apparent that this wasn't a drill. The kindergartners of Miss Ethel Rose's class would be the only ones to make it through the front door of the schoolhouse before it would become impassable due to flames. Upon realizing that they could not escape the building through the front exit, students began to panic and rush toward the rear exit of the school. In the chaos, students would trip over one another as they tried to escape. Children who had been rushing for the front exits found themselves trapped in the hallway between a mess of their classmates coming down the main stairs and the flames which were quickly growing. Students heading toward the rear exit found the small doorway leading out of the school was blocked by other children who had become stuck in an attempt to make it out the door at the same time. Above them, on the higher floors, Miss Laura Bodie led her 5th grade class down the hallway to the stairs that would take them to the first floor. When she realized that there was no way to escape through the first floor exits, she walked her students back to the main fire escape. She was able to break the glass of a window and get most of her students out to safety. Some students on the higher floors attempted to escape in a similar manner, but not all would be successful, and several students would perish after jumping out of the windows. By this time, word of the fire had already spread through the town, and everyone had either made their way to the school or were on their way. The fire department had been summoned and were also making their way to the scene. Many parents would arrive only to find that their children were trapped inside the building with no way out. The Cincinnati Enquirer from March 5, 1908, recounts several tales of parents desperately trying to save their children. One such story, speaking of a father named Wallace Upton, reads as follows. Just in front of Upton's eyes was his own 10-year-old daughter, helpless in the crush, badly burned and trampled upon, but still alive. The fire was close upon her, and if she could not be saved at once, she could not be saved at all. Upton sprang to help her, and with all of his strength sought to tear her from the weight that was pressing down on her and from the flames which were creeping close. Although he worked with desperation, his strength was unequal to the task. He fought until his clothing was partly burned from him, and the skin on his face and hands were scorched. Other men attempted to induce him to move, but he refused until he saw that his girl was dead and that he could not save her life by sacrificing his own. He then withdrew from the schoolhouse and, although so seriously injured that he may die, lingered about the place for several hours, refusing to go to the hospital or seek medical attention. This was just one of many stories involving parents desperately trying to save their children from the blaze and watching in horror with no way to do anything to rescue them. One of the students, Marie Whitman, was credited with braving the fire to save her little brother and was able to get him and herself out through a window with smoke nearly choking them before they escaped. One of the teachers, Miss Colmar, recounted a heartbreaking story of the children that she could not save. It was awful. I can see the wee things in my room holding out their tiny arms and crying for me to help them. Their voices are ringing in my ears yet, and I shall never forget them. When the alarm rang, I started the pupils to marching from the building. When we started down the front stairs, we were met by a solid wall of flames and clouds of dense smoke. We retreated, and when we turned, the children became panic-stricken, and I could not do anything with them. They became jammed in the narrow stairway, and I knew that the only thing for me to do was to get around to the rear door, I suppose, and help those who were near the rear entrance. When I got there, after climbing out of a window, I found the children so crowded in the narrow passageway that I could not even pull one of them out. Those behind pushed forward, and as I stood there, the little ones piled on one another. Those who could stretched out their arms to me and cried for me to help them. I tried with all of my might to pull them out and stayed there until the flames drove me away. The fire raged on, burning the cross supports of the building until they were unable to support the weight from the floors above. Without warning, the building collapsed, and all who were still trapped inside would perish. Initial reports estimated between 160 and 170 children had lost their lives. But in the end, the total would be 172 students and 2 teachers. More than half of the families in the town lost at least one child in the tragedy. The railroad company opened a nearby building as a makeshift morgue, and volunteers worked for hours to sift through the rubble and recover bodies. Grieving parents would filter in throughout the day and night to try to identify their children, many needing to be identified by trinkets they wore as they were burned beyond recognition. 19 bodies were unable to be identified and had to be buried in a mass grave in Lakeview Cemetery in nearby Cleveland. In the aftermath of the fire, the grieving community looked for who to blame. A coroner's inquest was held to determine the cause of the fire, but no one cause could be established. Many people placed the blame on the janitor, Fritz Herder, who they suspected had been in the basement when the fire started and had somehow caused it. The official cause would be labeled as an overheated steam pipe coming in contact with a dry joist. But Mr. Herder would argue against this being the cause, stating that the furnaces were running low that day because it was unusually warm. This is in dispute as the reported temperature on the day was around the freezing mark. Mr. Herder also reported that he was on his way to turn up the furnace when he met the 3 girls that had reported the fire. But those 3 girls reportedly perished in the fire, which seems odd since they would have been the first to see it. He would seek out police protection due to anger from the community, but that anger would subside when people realized that he lost 3 of his own children in a fire that day. Initial reports stated that the main cause for the loss of life was that the doors to the school building opened inward instead of outward. This would be shown to be incorrect as the investigation unfolded. During fire drills, students had been trained to head for the main exit of the school, which would be the exit that was blocked by fire on March 4th. The rear door of the school was only a little over 5 feet wide with both doors open, but it would become even narrower when one of the doors closed as the students were trying to escape, causing them to try and fit through a much smaller area and subsequently clog up the opening easier. There was also one fire escape available, but it didn't go all the way to the ground, and many children were too afraid to make the 6-foot jump needed to escape. The town fire department turned out to be another major issue. As a smaller town, Collingwood had 20 volunteer firefighters and very basic equipment. Their ladders were not tall enough or sturdy enough to rescue the children from the higher floors. From the time the fire started, it took 20 minutes for the fire department to arrive on scene. Someone had to run nearly a mile from the school to the fire department and ring the alarm bell to summon the volunteers, who were able to get to the station, get horses hitched up, and get to the school. The horses they used needed to be borrowed as the horses owned by the fire department were being used on the other side of town to clear snow and ice. In the days, weeks, and years that followed the disaster, it will be used as an example to promote fire safety in schools. Most of the change would take years and even decades, as many schools considered themselves already sufficient. Within days of the tragedy, the Ohio Congress had passed a bill that was signed by the governor that set aside $25,000, equivalent to about $750,000 in today's money, to create a committee of 3 residents of Collinwood, known as the Collinwood School Fire Relief Commission, to examine the list of victims and pay them up to $100, equivalent to about $300 today, per child lost or injured in the fire. Though this would never make whole the families of the victims, it would help to cover the cost to lay the victims of the horrific tragedy to rest. As a parent myself, I can't fathom the pain that these families went through. Within the span of only a few hours, parents lost their children, a community had its heart ripped out, and the future would change for the entire country. The changes made to the school fire safety regulations following this disaster have potentially saved hundreds or possibly even thousands of students, but we can never know the full impact. How many disasters were averted because 172 students lost their lives on March 4th, 1908? The main lesson I took away from this story is to hold your loved ones close and treat every day like it could be the last time that you see them.
Welcome back. It's like I said in the beginning, being who I am, being such a late in life father, I'm going to be 58 years old when my daughter graduates high school, and if she goes to college, if she actually finds a career choice and goes to college, I'm gonna be almost 60 when she gets out. And just the thought of something like this happening, I can't imagine what these people, what this little town, what these parents went through. I mean, especially the maintenance man, losing 3 of his own children in this catastrophe and then being blamed. All I can really say is what Josh Hawk said a couple of times during the video about holding your loved ones close, because you never know when it's going to be the last time you get to. It's no better words have been spoken. I hope you guys all take away a little something from this video. I hope that these laws constantly change to keeping our children, our grandchildren, even in some cases our great-grandchildren, safe when they're someplace they're supposed to be safe. The next safest place they could possibly be, besides with a loved one or a family member. But that's all I got for you guys today. I'm going to try to sleep. I have to work today. So, y'all take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. God bless you. God love you all. And we'll see you in history.